Okay. All right. Hello, everyone. Hopefully you can hear me. Okay. Good afternoon. So, what's really funny about doing pencil, ink, and brush is that it oftentimes ends up being not so much a hangout, which, was really what I was designing this for. I just want people to come hang out, do a little drawing, a little painting, whatever. And it has basically become just, more of a me talking to you a lot of times. Less of a hangout, more of a, I don't know, some ways kind of a how-to, and other ways it's just me sitting here talking about what I'm working on, talking about the painting that I'm doing. And I dig it, it's fun, because that's really what I wanted to do in the first place. But I'm really, I would love it if, if you're watching, you're hanging out, maybe you're, catching this later or whatever, just, come hang out live with me. It'll be fun. I think so anyway. Because, this is what I'm doing every Saturday. I actually really do look forward to doing this every week, so so if you end up coming to watch this after the fact, after it's already been aired, and maybe you're not going to the YouTube page, but you're checking it out on Twitch afterwards, hey, that's great. But I would love it if if you stop by live with me if you can. Not obviously taking drawing requests or commissions or anything, but it's still, I would love it if you think, maybe I will check him out live. Let's see what's going on. It's a little more entertaining that way, I think. And besides, I love the live format. I think it's really fantastic being able to talk directly to people. The only times I've ever really had that when I go live is when I'm like playing Stonehearth, which maybe I'll do a little more of that, just so there's a little more something going on. But this is fun. I definitely want to do more of this, and I want you to be able to enjoy that and participate in that and hang out with me while we're doing that. So, let's do things. Alright, so first things first, I need to get the pens that I was going to use so I can draw faces. I have my pens here. Where they are. Because as much as I love painting and drawing with my brushes, as you well know, my hands are not the steadiest things in the world. So in order to keep the piece from looking really crazy, I'll take my pens and do it all by using that. I was going to say by hand but everything I'm doing is by hand. So the pens I'm looking for, and I need to come up with a solution to my work space here because I don't have anything where I need it. Things are just kind of all over the place, and I don't really have much in the way of dedicated. Well, I mean, I have dedicated space, but I need some storage options and placements of things and clips and containers. So I'm not bumping the camera, maybe better lights, you know, that sort of thing. Alright, so here's what I'm going to do. Let's go ahead and lay down the basic background color for this piece here. And I'm trying to just arrange it right now so you can see as much of it as possible. There we go. So what do we want? I feel like I want a warm color for the background. So in here and here. And what I'm going to do is, and this is what I always do, so you just saw me just cleaning up all my pencil lines after, obviously, the ink has been set to dry for quite some days. So we don't really run the risk of smearing anything. But I want to clean up all of these pencil lines that are in here, just so that they don't interfere with a lot of the final look. But I will always go over the entire piece with whatever that basic color is, just to lay down that color. And then I will layer on top of that all my other colors. So we go very, very light with what we do, just to make sure that we have everything we need. So as I think I showed you guys, I have these. So what I do is, I have my colors here. Show you the paints that I'm using. I bought these paints because I love using watercolors and I love using inks, and I wanted to have a little more control and less of a refill issue. So let's see, is this, yes, this is the right color. So I'm going to be using yellow in the background just to draw down some yellow daylights. I'd rather have our color in the background be bright, sunshiny, happy. So with some yellow light in there, we'll offset it with just a little bit of blues maybe in there, but most of the light will be yellow. So we'll be using that as kind of like to stage all of our lights. When working with watercolors, it has been my experience that it's best to work from lightest to darkest, because you're not really going to be able to really lighten up any darks. So it's best to just get all your light stuff out of the way and then just layer the darks on top of that. So we'll be starting with our light tones, our light colors, and we'll be going with our yellow here. And then after that, we'll just be building everything up. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to put a couple of drops of yellow down onto my palette here. Just kind of... We'll do that. And then I got my dropper here, so I'm going to take some of my water. And honestly, for this, I may need to get like another cup, but you know, we'll worry about that later. In the meantime, I definitely want to make sure that all of the pencil lines are cleaned up, because they'll start doing different things and depending on what's going on. And the only reason I can do this is because, you know, I can draw the faces in afterwards too. So. Okay, so next I have my brush. I'm gonna get this saturated in some water. It's just a bunch of little things that I realize that I need when I sit down to paint, and I don't realize I need them until I need them. Like I could use a towel. So give me a minute while I get myself a towel. Once I've done that, I'm just going to go over the piece with some water. To be very careful. And then we'll just all over with the yellow. So you probably can't see all of the yellow that I just put on there, but you can probably see a fair amount of it. So that's how we want to start. And we will let this dry just a little bit before we do anything else to it, because the worst that can happen is that, you know, we overload the paper itself with too much moisture and it'll start to buckle. It's already starting to ripple a little bit, and we want to be very, very careful about that. So we don't want to put too much water down at once. It's one of the reasons why doing what I just did with that type of, let's thaw some water on here first and then we'll go over that with some actual color, can be really risky when it comes to fully coloring a piece, because you could just cause the paper to warp and ripple just way too much, especially if you're going to be doing washes. They can pretty much destroy a piece, so you want to be very, very careful with that. But it looks like we're just fine for the most part. It's rippling a little bit, but that's also why I have taped the entire edge of this so that, you know, it keeps the piece itself mostly flat. So it'll buckle and warp and try to do things, but it'll stay pretty contained and, you know, won't really go anywhere. So what happens when you have warped edges is that it's almost impossible to work with. One thing I have, since I have done that before, one thing I've learned to do is to just take like a heavy book and just lay it down on top of the paper while it's still wet. And that will flatten the piece back out, but that means you have to wait for it to completely dry and cure before you do anything else with it, but that is definitely something you can do. Just cleaning up that little gutter down there. Okay. So while we are waiting for at least just this piece to just kind of do its thing right now, we can talk about what else we're going to do with our colors. So I do have some blue here somewhere. There you are. Okay. So I do have my blue. And what I want to do is definitely go in here and do some things, but what I usually end up doing with my blue is that a lot of times it's also the base tone for my shadows. So I will oftentimes, depending on what else I'm doing with the piece, if I really want to go in with what my light looks like or how I'm really staging the piece, my blues will always be my base coat, and then I'll just layer darker colors on top of that. Turns out for darker pieces occasionally, but there's a lot of different grades that I can get in there for that. But I wanted the light to be yellow because I want that really highlighty kind of yellow. And then I'm going to take my blue and just go in and to define some blue areas, like the sky. I definitely am going to want this to be a little dry before I do that, so that I'm laying it down properly and it's not going to turn it completely green, which we're usually pretty good with. And like I said, we'll go in and do some different things with some different elements of it, and then we'll just build from there. And then we'll start with just getting stuff going in the background. What I like about, starting off with these light colors is that, again, as I said, we're really just trying to build up our lights. So at least we have now everything, it has its light face, so then we can go into different areas that are supposed to receive shadow. We'll cover that with blue. And then once that's in a really good way, then we can go with the true color of everything. So we'll have our lights and our shadows, and then we can go ahead and build out our actual colors for things. I've done this before. It's always worked out for me well then. But if it doesn't work out, we'll all be watching this live as I destroy this piece. So another thing that I have seen other artists do is they will go ahead and they will make a full scan of their original, so that, in case they make a mistake, something just does not go well, or, maybe they just want to clean things up before they start painting on it, they'll have that digital copy that they can say, you know what, I'm just ready to let's just do it this way. I will not be doing that for this piece. Maybe that's something I might try for another time, because I see the value of that. I definitely see the wisdom of doing something like that, and it didn't really occur to me to do that with this piece, but I'm feeling really confident in my ability to turn this into something really great. So like I said, maybe at another time I will do something like that. But if I do that, I'm going to be going off screen to do that. I will not be spending so much time doing that while we're actually watching paint dry. So another thing I do love is, yes, this is occasionally a technique of putting wet on wet, but I feel like that's usually mostly applying to oils. And I do not want that much water. I'm still missing some brushes. I am ill prepared for today, but that's okay. Let's go ahead and grab our brushes. When it comes to painting large areas of color, I will use specific brushes to accomplish those effects. So for, my big washes, is what I just did there, I'll use a 2-inch or even a 3-inch brush to really block in those colors. And then after that, beyond that rather, I'll say maybe I'll take, depending on the size of the piece, maybe a smaller wash brush like this, 3/4 inch, and then I'll just, block in, specific areas that are supposed to receive certain tonal values. Like right about now, I'm going to do that exact thing. Maybe I do need more water. One thing I do recommend is get yourself some scrap paper. Like any little book or notepad, or even, get yourself like a small watercolor pad, 9x12, 8x10, whatever kind of sizes you can get. I don't know. Or even like the little watercolor postcards, anything like that you can use to test out your colors before you put them down. I highly recommend doing so, just so you can see what they're actually going to look like. This will also help to keep you from making costly painting mistakes. I am using, as my scrap pad, my mixed media paper notebook. And from there, can layer my colors and see what's actually going to happen when I mix down my certain colors. So as you can see right there, I've got my yellow down here, and I've just layered on some blue up top. So you can see in some of these areas where they meet, they do turn a little greenish, but they do start to turn back to blue, and that really depends on how many layers of that blue that I'm putting on there. Let's go ahead. Now I put that yellow on pretty light, but let's actually see. So yep, see we're getting very green in there. So what that's telling me is that I'm definitely going to need another yellow of blue before I'm fully satisfied. But if it stays a little green, that's fine. It's not the end of the world. Some areas can absolutely stay that way. The most important thing to remember is that we wanted that yellow there, because that is going to be our highlight color. Basically, the blue is going to be all of your shadow areas. So effectively, any area that's in any reasonable amount of shadow, or just facing away from the light, you want to receive that blue. Next, I'm going to take my round brush and get into some, just a few shadow detail here. So like areas like that, and there, and there. Maybe down in there. Over here as well. And that's really to show some texture in there. Next, since I am using a round brush, I can actually get into some of these character details. So let's start over. I was going to start over here. We're going to start over here. I'm going to tilt my camera just a little bit so you can see what I'm about to do. So we know this character is obviously much more in shadow. So we want that like that. And what's great about this, you can draw, wrinkle details in clothing that you probably weren't able to originally get with just your black ink. And remember, everybody's casting a shadow on each other, so I'm gonna kind of keep up with that. Gotta get there. Draw details. I'm gonna need more blue. Can do things like that. And he is being covered up by that shadow there. We can do that. Straight that way. A lot of times, effectively, what is happening when you put down a light color is you're basically changing the white of your paper to something else. So you're no longer operating on white paper, you're operating on yellow paper. Another thing you can do, and this is if you plan this out really advanced, really far ahead, you can just go ahead and before you even lay down your inks, you can say, you know what, let's wash the paper in this particular color because I know where I'm going with this. So you can totally do that. Give me just a moment. I'm gonna check something real quick. Using that, and I can just go ahead and use this. Just needed to do a quick shout out to my family real quick. Let's go ahead and minimize that. Okay. So now that we've really getting into where these colors are going, like I said, you can usually just say, well, I want to layer these on here. And I can do that. Got a little dark over there, but that's okay. We'll deal with it. Because we'll end up doing a second layer of blue to help deepen in these shadows. And that means I'll be adding more blue into the areas that I want to be as close to pure blue as possible, but everything else can stay that shade of blue-green that I've got going on right now. You know, let's use a flat brush to get in here and do what I need to do. So what I need to do is that. Well, that went in the wrong direction, but that's all right. Yeah, we definitely want to do that with those down there. Do you want to get in here? We'll do that. So I feel like you probably can't see all of the detail that I'm doing here, but I promise you there's some stuff going on. Some stuff. Alright, so we're just adding in this blue here in certain areas to deepen in those shadows and just to kind of get everything prepared for its next step. And when it comes to adding shadow, I can be a little wild. And that's honestly all that is not just that I know what I'm doing. A lot of times I don't, but I just feel that there's a more organic looking shadow that is able to happen. And we're, you know, adjusting the shadow shape to be a little more interesting. So there's some things that follow a more definitive shadow pattern, and sometimes I'm just like, you know what, put this in here because it'll look cool. And it usually does. It usually does. Put it all up in there, and back there, and right in under it there. Okay. Now, as I said, we need to add a second layer of blue. So what I usually do for my second layer of deeper shadows is we need to obviously first define those areas that are going to get those deeper shadows. And once we have, we can actually add a little more blue to our selection, to our palette. Just with a little more water. So we don't want it to be ridiculous, but we want to show that the shadows are deeper in a different part of the piece. So I'll show you what I mean with my scrap paper. We would have this right up here with just a second layer of blue. So with that second layer of blue, what we're going to do, we're going to go right on into our sky area. And we'll put that in there. Just like that. Do that over here as well. I'm not really going to do that with the trees, only because they actually are going to get a color. So we'll do that. And then we'll do that right down there. And then we'll do that right up in there. And then I think we'll do that right in here. And we'll do some of this right in here. Maybe we'll even get all up in there to do that. Oh, and let's not forget this area over here. We'll do some right in there. Maybe some back there. We'll even get a little bit of that going on back there. Okay, so now that we've done that, we can now do more character detail in here. Do that. Hey everybody, if you are just stopping in to see what's going on, welcome to Pencil, Ink, and Brush, where I am painting live. Let's get in there. Do something like that. Bring some of that down, and do that, and we'll do some of that. We really do want some of these darker shadows to stand out on their own and, you know, really be as visible as possible, even despite the fact that they're layered on top of another layer of blue. Some of that. Where else do I need to go? Right up in there. But these are the shadowed areas that are receding even farther back. So around these areas is where you see how we have some of our black areas right here. As we go into those areas with our deeper blue, what we want to do is steadily get that dark blue to that black level to really show where that has been defined. And we'll use our blue to add a little more definition and shape and texture to everything else that's going on. So by that, what I mean is some areas are going to be more blue than others, much more. And we want to really, as I said, we're working up to our darker colors. So we're layering in our darker colors right now so that we'll be able to work up to those visually. So we want to see where all the other areas are where we don't have this happening. Thanks for stopping in, everybody. How's it going? And we're going to go in there with some of this happening. We'll get some of this. We'll do a little bit of that. We'll go in here. So most of what I'll be doing today is, kind of preparing the actual map of shadows that we're going to be working with. I'm just a little confused. Oh, let's not forget this arrow right there because that should be like that. Do that. Do that. So at this point, what I'll usually do is decide how deep into these blues that I actually want to get. So you can see that I'm still going over some of these areas that I've already done. Paint's a little drier over here now, so we can definitely go in. And I'll probably do one more pass of blue in these backgrounds. Just to really get in there with what our colors are. And in order to do that the way that I want to do, I'm going to add one more drop of my blue in here. And I'm not really going to add much more water to what I already have down. Because ideally, I don't want to really add a whole lot of water to this piece. What I want is just color. So you'll see that. There's a little dude just hanging out right there. Get on down. Okay, perfect. And very carefully, a lot more carefully than I was anyway, just draw in our deeper shadows. Turn the camera a little bit so you can see what I'm doing over here and down here. I don't want to go much darker back there with the sky either, so we're going to leave that just as it is. But almost everything else that has a deeper shadow to it, I definitely want to define some more shape right there. That looks good. So let's say maybe even up here I'll do just that. Okay. Love it. All right. So now we're gonna come into here as well. Do the same thing. Even in shadowed areas, we should still be able to, especially if they're not, you know, completely black, we should still be able to define shapes, patterns, at least a little bit, even if it's just, you know, like I said, just all in shadow. Some of those things we actually should still be able to make out. We're gonna, this is part of the branch that's back there, we'll do that. And since this final layer is my final layer of blue, to be very selective about where we add it. So I think I mentioned earlier that, you know, we're at this point now, we want this blue to approach our blacks in value. So we're gonna just go ahead and work this deep blue in here to get that. So we don't need to go too far away from where those are. That just lets us know where an eyeball exists. That's a mouth. That's another mouth. Daring, I know. But that's what I do. Get in here with some of this. A little bit of that. A little bit of that. That. Bring that down a little bit, just like that. Get in there. True test right here. Can I hold my hand steady long enough to do that? There, I got it. Okay. That was really great. Celestian, really great. Okay. But we do this so that our shadows can have texture. We can discern them. just enough water really to wet the brush, and that's it. I'm not trying to, again, add any more water to the paint itself. We just need to wet the brush. Well, because there's a curve right there to the fabric. Definitely drop that blue down in there too. Only because he's actually behind her. So we should have a whole lot more blue going on there for him. There we go. And we're going to wet the brush just to get that going. And then we want to add more texture up in here to the hair. Do hold my hand so that I can keep it steady while I'm doing fine details. So I usually do something like this. You can see what I'm doing. So you can see that a lot of these shadows really are starting to take shape, and that's fantastic because the next layer is going to be adding on our actual colors. So let's continue to get in here and add these necessary shadows. Now I use the shadows as a means of helping me to determine shape and contour. And the shapes that often emerge, I usually stick with. One of the reasons why I really love doing my pencil work beforehand, aside from, actually just drawing the image, sometimes what ends up coming out of those pencils is, potential shadows that I can work with. That I can turn into an actual part of the piece. So I will, as I'm looking at everything, and this is one of the reasons why I have such a very loose way of drawing and painting. And by loose, I mean I just scribble. I scribble a lot. But one of the reasons why I do that is it actually does serve a purpose for me. Is so that I can see, okay, where am I naturally adding form? Where am I naturally adding a curve or a contour? can I actually see any of that happening here? And it almost always works out for me. And I do say almost always because sometimes I do just have to, I see things starting to happen and I say, I don't like where that's going, but it looks good. It's not great, but it's something. And it's a great start, but it's not exactly what I see. And sometimes, more often than not, I really do surprise myself with where I add those shadows or even where I see them. Alright, give me just a moment again while I check something here. Okay, so now that we've done that, is there any place else? So what you'll notice is that as we do this, some of that blue will stand out a little more. Alright, so that is a really, really solid first, second, and third layer of shadow there. So now let us talk about color. Cleaning my brush here. Oops, you know what? Something I didn't do properly back here. You know what? This always ends up happening. There we go. Okay. Now he's got something going on up there. So that shadow over there needs to be a little deeper. And then we need to get in here. Do that. Maybe a little bit of that. See that, that, that. Here, actually do that, cover that up, do that. So I always, as I said before, and I think I said this in the last video as well, step back, take a moment, look at what you've actually done before you move forward with anything else. That whole step back process will show you where you need to add things, fix things, correct things, whatever. Painting is one of those things that, for me anyway, I'm editing as I go. Only because it's not until I step back that I really am actually seeing what I've done and what I can do better. And if I can actually fix the piece right then and there, then that is exactly what I'm going to do. So with stepping back, this is what we're actually able to see. And so we see where there's a lot of blue going on, and that, we've covered up a lot of the yellow, so it now reads as though we have some brighter lights going on here. There's a lot of high contrast. The next step, again, is going to be to add in the necessary color that's going to go in here. So I do treat this as a blocking in my values. So I don't even a lot of times go with a lighter color, usually I'll just stick with my whites, but I really wanted to do something with my lights in this piece, so I made those yellow. Whatever I have that's basically yellow is going to get a single, it's going to be like, I'm going to do a full layer of whatever base color everything needs to be, and I will play around with my shadows after that. The lights will be mostly the same. I'll probably do something around in here with this background once I come up with, kind of a look that I want to have for that. But for now, I really just kind of want that to be that. And those colors will actually act as the mid-tones to the piece, so that'll help soften up this contrast once everybody has their tone. So what I'm going to do, I'm going to take a quick break, and then I will come back to after this dries a little bit as well, because we're going to be doing some more coloring on top of that, and I don't want the blue that I have in there to run or to do anything else. So we're going to come back in a little bit. I'm going to take a quick break, and we will see what colors we can add. Okay, I'm back. So what I'm going to do, here we go. That's what I wanted. Maybe not, actually. I picked up my green thinking I wanted to use green, but I feel like I want to go back to my yellow. What I want to do is I'm going to get these trees blocked in there a little bit. So what I definitely will do, we're going to detail those trees back there in the same way that we detailed our characters in the foreground. So we'll start, let's say, darker colors down there. I don't want to use that brush. Let's close before we have an accident. So you can see what I'm doing. Just want to get some texture in there. It in just the exact same way that we did with our characters in the foreground. Okay. Next. Add a little more yellow to our palette. Close that up. We'll add some water to that. But instead of going right in on that, let's talk about everyone else's color. So they don't all have their own color palette. Well, let me say this over again. These characters have, in fact, their own color palette. There we go. And the way their color palette will work is going to interact with the lights and the shadows that I already have in here. What I want to do is each one is going to get a thin layer of their specific color. So they're going to get their flats. I have a character in this scene right now who wears all black. I have a character in this scene right now who wears all white. I have in this scene a character who wears some combination of black and red. I have a character here who is in purple. So we want to be pretty careful about how we add in these colors, because they can really overpower the scene, especially depending upon the placement of this character. So obviously, I don't really necessarily say that I chose pretty well about where where characters are sitting based on the color palette that they have. So let's start with the easy thing. Let's get my flesh tones in. As most people ought to know, brown skin or dark skin people are not always just going to be, brown mixed with some other darker color. There is a lot more to them, to their skin tone, than just that. Now, we can play around with that however we want to, but usually what I'll do is I will occasionally start, more often than not, I will start off with a base of brown. It helps to kind of get that area that I know that I want it. And then we will add... Sometimes I don't even start with brown, depending upon their complexion. Let's say that maybe... Oops, I'm bumping the camera way too much. Maybe I will start off with a base of orange, or maybe a base of yellow, or maybe I'll even start off with a base of violet, just so that I can have the values that I want. So what we'll do, and this is, I think I may have mentioned this when I first got my my droppers, as well as the actual bottles. Show those to you in a minute if I haven't already. What I want to do with these is actually create the skin tones that will be regularly used in my character paintings, so that I always have the tone that I need when I need it. So I have a couple of lighter skin characters here, so we're gonna take just a few drops of yellow. So now we have that yellow. The next thing we want to do is add in some actual brown. Actually, no, let's not add brown just yet. Brown I usually use is kind of a quick thing. It's whenever I need to middle out the tonality, I will add that brown. Here we go, my violet. And I just need one drop. There we go. And now we're going to use my little round brush here, and we're just going to mix that up. Now, depending on what's going on, it may still read as very, very yellow. Or it may read as a little weird green color, which is kind of what it's doing. This is where I would add my brown. So once we've done that, we're going to add this all in. I just added a little bit of water to help thin this down, this mixture down a little bit. The brown, like I said, kind of helps to tone down that contrast in there. So I'll end up with that. Do want to add a little more water because we don't want to paint this very thick look onto it. And the paints that I'm using are pretty concentrated, so if I were to just paint these on here without using any water, then they will go on pretty thick. Okay, that's better. Ultimately, the paint should glide onto the paper. So I've got that going right there. So now let's go find our character who needs to wear this. And that is her. Her is Belinda. So what I do is anywhere where her bare skin is showing, that is what will receive this color. So what ends up happening once I do that is, as you can see, we have, we're starting to get a little muddy around here where that blue shadow is, but it's not the end of the world. That blue was still technically kind of wet, but I knew that going into it that was something that was likely to happen. Pardon me if you get a little dizzy. I'm about to move the camera, so I really want you to see what I just did there. So we're going to get close on her just like that. So we just kind of glazed on her skin tone right there. So in the areas that were still that light yellow, I'm going to move it back now. In the areas that were still her light yellow, what we did, you can see that the pure color is coming through. That flesh tone that I mixed up. And in some of these darker areas that were touched by the blue, her skin tone turns a little darker. There we go. So what we're going to do is we're going to go in here and just mix that up a little bit more. Blur that line because that actually is the effect that we want. There we go. Now, the next question, is there any other character that gets as light as she is? And, not really. Most everybody else here is fairly dark complexioned. The only other one person that actually does approach that, but I want to add more red to him. So we're going to do what we did again. But instead of using yellow, we're going to start with orange. Oops. I have not opened this orange. That's right. This orange is a brand new orange, so it has not been opened at all. So I get to... When I got my paints, I opened... excuse me. I took a moment, opened them all, played around with a few of them. But when I bought them, orange was not available at the store, so I had to wait a pretty long while before I could really do what I wanted to do with these colors. So if I needed an orange, I just made myself an orange. But I like using the colors as they come pure out of their bottles or tubes or pans, just to give me more options to not have to mix colors. I get to hold on to more colors as I need them. So for this character here, he is going to be, because I need him more red, I'm going to start him with orange as a base. And then add my violet. I like using violet because it still has a little, it's red and blue. So it still has a little bit of both of the things that I need. So we get a drop of violet on my eyelid. Wonder how that looks on me right now. It's fine. And then we do still want to add some brown to him to, again, soften that whole look up. So we're going to take some of this brown that I scooped out, and then we're going to mix all of that in together. And now we're going to get some water. See, I still need more red, so I actually will add some pure red to his mix. There we go. So we end up with that for him. I typically really like to add, I always start with mixed colors. Whenever I'm making a flesh tone, I almost never start off with like a pure, like a yellow or a blue or a red. I usually add those only if I need to change the tonal quality, but so I'll usually start with an orange or a violet. I never start off with green, but yes, that's perfect for him. So now we're going to go in here. He has a warmer complexion, so that's why we start him off with orange and we add red. You know, I think I need more brown in here. And again, we add brown to help, stabilize, I guess. Can't really think of the word I'm looking for, but it's basically what the brown does. The brown really adds a grounding quality and kind of roots the tone so that we get something that's in the neighborhood of flesh. Okay. But he will still come up kind of red, and you know what? That's cool. I can do that with his hair because it's mostly going to end up being fairly dark anyway. Okay. And there we are. So the thing about all these characters is that they are varying shades of darks and lights. So most everyone else is also going to have that orange as a base. The only reason I started with yellow for her is because I want her. She has yellow. She has lighter skin tone than just about everybody else. So I want her to have that. So we'll go ahead and begin adding on this mix. I've got too much of it on my brush just to get that in there. So I like them in the same tone there. And now I'm going to show you the tone for my darkest character here. And that's this guy right here. He also has a lot more skin showing. So when I originally designed this particular race of characters, they all had black skin. It's kind of a thing I did. It was, I don't know, I wouldn't really say it was limiting. I thought it was kind of liberating because you know, how many characters in fantasy art do you see that have actual dark skin? They're, you know, if you follow Dungeons and Dragons, then you know that they are all drow and they are all effectively evil characters, but that is not what I want to do. I want to show characters that are a little more well-rounded than that. So we have that right there. So I just put some violet down. I will add a little bit of orange, just a drop or two, to help warm up his tone. And then I will add, where is my, that's black, here we go. We'll add some brown just to balance it out a little bit. Whew, I'm actually getting paint all over myself. Alright. And then next, add some water. So what ends up happening with such a dark skinned character is if those blue shadows end up disappearing, then at that point I will go over him with just a little black just to deepen in those shadowed areas, but honestly, totally fine. Because in watercolors, you still want some of that lighter color to show. Let's see what the contrast is against this. They're very much the same. So this is what I mixed up, and it's right here, and what I was saying is it's still very much the same. So I do want to add a little more of my violet to that because, again, it's supposed to be a character with a little darker skin tone. So add a little more violet. This is also a very difficult color to mix properly, at least for me. So I always end up experimenting a lot. Alright, where are we? We're getting there. Still not quite, though. You know what? Let's just go ahead. Let's just go for it. It's actually as dark as it really needs to be, I think. So I don't want to overdo it, but we're going to start down here with this leg. Oh, you know what? That actually is perfect. Get all up in there. Now the thing about adding your base colors and why I'm so finicky, why I was so just now so finicky about where it was in value is because I'm not really intending to go back over this too much to add in more shadows and value. I've already done my shadows. Like, there's going to be a few things else that I'll put in there, but most of my shadows are already done. They're already there. And I don't want to go in there too much. I want the color itself to start at a darker level. That's his arm right behind her. So what I can do, and what I will do actually, is when I go in, I can go in again to deepen some of these shadows, and I will do that with blue. For now, I do still want to add just a little more of this violet here. We'll add 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. There we go. Quite a few more drops of that violet. And when it comes to mixing colors, I say go ahead, just go for it. Be as daring as possible when you're adding color. When you're mixing up your colors, because you never know what you're going to end up with that's actually going to work for what it is you're trying to do. And if you try to, I feel that, especially for me, trying to hem yourself in, and when I do it, try to hem myself in to, you know, something that is of an acceptable whatever that I think will actually work, it's not really where I want it to be. And it's not until I start playing around with things and experimenting and just push it to its limit, or what you think its limit could be or should be. And then when you see that, you'll say, you know what, I can take this further. So for him, my central character here, I'm going to go in with another layer. So what I was saying was, as I had made my characters, they were originally actually black-skinned. And I really wanted to keep with that. But, I don't know. Lately, I have just been wanting to really not go to such an extreme level when it comes to my character's skin tone. Alright, so now I got him. Every other character is also in that same skin tone that he has. He's just showing more of it. Especially this guy way back over here. So I want to maintain the essence of what I attempted to do. So that's why instead of, you know, starting with such a light tone, I start with a purple. I start with a violet to get them at least as close to that original dark skin that I had envisioned for them. Actually, for that guy all the way back there, I'm going to make him the same tone as this one here. Oops, that's a lot. Okay, there we go. All right. So what you just saw is me adding on these tones, the actual colors in here for their flesh. So with the shadows already being present, I can just glaze on those colors. And then afterwards you see, you know, that it's all still there. It's all still taking that shape. Oh, so yes, we can now actually go ahead and add that yellow that I wanted for those trees. So since I already have some yellow down, I'm just going to grab a flat brush, and now we can just go in. There we go. All right, that's satisfying to me. So at this point, at this point right now, I'm taking a step back to look at everything we've got. So now we can again start thinking about the colors that each character wears. So this character, you're going to see him in more. I'm actually going to bring in a little more blue, so we'll glaze in a lighter blue, so that, which should hopefully allow us, or maybe it'll be a purple, I think it'll be a purple, and that'll allow us to maintain the integrity of these shadows here. This character is in all black, so that will be just a thin layer of black just to go over everything, and that'll maintain that integrity there of these shadows. This character is wearing some green. This character, you know, I don't really know what she's wearing. This is going to be more of a gray and more neutral tones to get in here. This is my character that's going to be in all white. So probably, I don't want to say I'm going to, oops, let me move the camera so you can see what I'm doing. I don't want to say that I'm going to keep him as is, but I'll probably add yellow, a little more yellow, kind of like what I just did with the trees. Add some more yellow in as his primary highlight. Matter of fact, I can actually do that now. Since he is, so we want to kind of do like an opposite thing. So wherever the shadows aren't, we want to add in on the opposite side the yellow. And that shows contrast. Here we go. Alright, so what else can we do? Let's go ahead and add that purple in for right here. Oh, before I do that, I just want to do this one little thing. There we go. Not that it can be seen. But, you know. I once combined inks and watercolors to really make a bold looking piece. So what I'm going to do, kind of the same thing I did with that. I actually like how that looks. So what I'm going to do, let's go ahead and add these really yellowy highlights in here. Some of these characters. Let's help make those areas a little more bold. have to get everything. What we really do want to get is a lot of the actual ridges where the light is hitting kind of almost directly. Right there at the edge of some of those shadows. There, right there. Even he's getting some of this light in there, all the way back there. And we can do that down here as well. I usually add my highlights almost literally in the exact opposite spots, like the oppositional spots according to where the shadows are. So I get some of that on him, on her here too. Okay. And it really, of course, depends on the piece that you're making, the mood you're trying to evoke, what you're going to do with your lights and shadows, how you're going to get them to meet each other, how you're going to get them to reflect each other, what you're going to do with your skin tones, how you're going to layer all that in. There's a lot to consider depending on what it is you're actively trying to accomplish. So for right now, I'm looking at this in real life, and I'm looking at this, I'm like, wow, this is really beautiful. These characters look amazing so far, and I haven't even added in all of their flat tones for their clothing, but I'm really enjoying what I've got so far. One thing I do want to add, this character is wearing all white except for, I think, his shoes. They need to be brown. Here we go. So that was just straight brown that I put on him. What I recommend when it comes to watercoloring anything is to make sure that where the colors actually start that you're putting on, they should start at exactly that, I'm sorry, I'm moving the camera, the base value that you want, so that when you put it on, you're not trying to color correct at the same time. You want it to be as close to where you need it to be as possible so that you can just leave it alone. Leave your flats alone, and then you can go in and say, okay, I need some extra shadows here, so you can add your blue, your violet, or whatever it is your opposite color is on the color wheel, so you can actually really get into those shadows, or whatever it is you're trying to make as a shadow or a highlight. You can just kind of get in there and play around with that. Start as light as possible, and then you're going to work your way into those darker areas. You can layer light on top of darks. The problem is your lights are going to get lost in those darks. So if you're okay with having, you know, your yellows on top of your blues because you think that's going to look great, you like how that's going to look, then go for it. I will never stop a person from using their paints, or I will never tell you to not use your paints and your colors the way you feel best that they can be used. But I will say is experiment. See what it is you actually like. Some of those techniques that we say are, you know, wrong or incorrect for accomplishing certain things, maybe they can actually be really good at doing other things, and you are going to want to play around to see with what those things can actually accomplish before you make a decision to not do them at all. I know for a fact I have engaged in some painterly techniques that I think that anyone else would just kind of balk at and say, why would you do that? That doesn't look right. It's, you know what? It's because I felt like it. That's what I do. I do what I want. And you know what? I end up with some really fantastic results from it. So I say if that's what you want to do, then absolutely go for it. Show off what you can do by doing things the wrong way, or, you know, reevaluate what a lot of people are calling, well, that's wrong because this, that, and the other will happen. It's like, well, maybe that's the right technique for what this other person is trying to do. So I definitely recommend just play around with your colors and your values and how you're going to do things, like how I mix my colors. You know, I kind of happened upon that completely by accident. So it really wasn't I'm just going to do this. I noticed that, you know, I was already mixing these colors enough as it was. So I said, well, why don't I just do that in earnest so that I'm getting exactly what I want and not having to attempt to correct something later on. Why don't I just say, you know, I'll go ahead and mix these brown with this red and this violet here so that I can get that skin tone that I want. Most everything here is kind of green, though. That's fine. I dig it. But, you know, we'll add on some other colors. And that's one of the great things about, you know, doing a wash of, you know, whatever it is your favorite color happens to be. Maybe it's, you know, you're going to do a lighter tonal painting. You're going to do a piece that has a lot of high contrast in it. You're going to lay down your color, and then you're going to say, well, you know, everything's going to have this gloss of this particular color. Anyway, so let me just throw that on here. And then, hey, you know what? It works sometimes because you get a really great value, a really great thing happening with the piece itself that, you know, was worth the experimentation. So I say play with it and see what it delivers to you. So next we have I don't want to This is going to be interesting trying to decide what color to put in next, because some of these colors I'm not really going to be using that much, but let's find my green, because I want to at least get him in. Oh, is this another color I haven't opened? No, okay, I did. And so that's some green. I'm going to add some yellow to it. Lots of yellow. You know what? I like it. It's that green right there. I dig it. So that is what we're going to glaze on for him. It's perfectly light enough and pale enough that we can just go ahead and do this. Now he's in green. He's not really showing up with a lot of contrast right now, but that's because everything else around him is also still in those same value family. So he's going to look kind of washed out. But once I add in the color for these two characters, and they're both in a darker color, you'll actually start to see more of that. So where's my black? I definitely want to get him going. That's right. There we go. He gets black, like nothing else but black. Well, he gets black. And a little red, but he gets black. Mostly black. And what you're seeing now is the point of all the adding in the blue and on top of the yellow, and we have those shadows. Everything starts to take shape. Really play around with these things that are going on in there. Like almost literally things have shape to them now. Is my red. How much red do I need? Not a whole lot, so we'll just use a drop because I only need a little bit of it. There we go. A drop of red. And a small brush. There we go. They're all over there. This red itself is kind of bold, so you should really see it right now. Lovely. I'll just add that red in there to his sash. Now, we always start with just adding our flats. We're not really worried about, like I said, trying to correct colors and make them deeper, darker, better, whatever. We just want to get our flat tones in there. Once the flats are all in, then we can go back and say, okay, let's do a little more with this. Let's make this darker. Let's really pop this out. That's when we'll start playing around with that. As of right now, it is 3 o'clock. I am going to pack it all in for the day. I do want to thank you for joining me. I do see I have a few new watchers right now, and I did get a couple of new followers, so thank you right there for that. Cosmic Horizon Studios, thank you for the follow. Welcome to my channel. When we come back, we'll definitely finish playing around and adding in some of the flat tones in there. We were only spent so much time working on that because I was adding in everything else, but that time actually did go by really fast. So I was not expecting 2 hours to happen already. Again, thank you for tuning in and watching this. I will put this up onto the YouTube channel. Hopefully should get that up today. I don't really have much else going on. We're probably going to run out and do a few things. And then, the rest of the night I am in the rest of the weekend. So I'll have plenty of time to actually upload this video to the YouTube channel. So you'll be able to, watch this again if there's something else you wanted to see again. Something you wanted to hear me explain again for whatever reason. If that's the case, you can definitely send me a message on Facebook at Illustrator of Fantasies. I'm also on Twitter at CelestianIOF, CelestiIOIAN, capital IOF. So you can find me there. You can also send a message to my email at celestian@illustratoropfantasies.com. And then I will definitely take a look at, the question you have, and I will answer to the best of my ability. So, again, thank you so much for watching, and I hope the rest of you have a really, really wonderful Saturday afternoon. Thanks for stopping by. Take care.